Welcome to UX Banter Season 3, where I, Dushyant Kanungo, talk to the leaders in the design field about their journey and what inspires them to be the best. I also touch upon the aspects of the industry such as jobs, trends, and challenges, to name a few. This podcast is presented by Galaxy UX Studio and powered by Galaxy Weblinks, an Inc. 5000 company. Hello, everyone. This is Dushyant Karungo, your host for the UX Banter podcast. The guest on today's episode, designing is his passion. He helps brand create value from the space between the present and what's possible. His agency, Free Association, leads his clients through complex product design and innovation challenges. He specializes in the quantities of innovation, brand strategy, team leadership, Northstar prototyping, storytelling, UX, and UI evolution. Please welcome our guest, the founding partner at Free Association, Mr. David Landa.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
And we are excited to have you here. I think there are few people, when you start conversing with them, you realize that there is so many layers to the path or the journey that they have taken. And while we were discussing earlier, I realized that there is a whole new dimension to the way things actually work out in your world. Is something we would definitely like to explore more. So I hope that you are as excited as we are.
Always. Yes, very much so.
So if I got it right, that you started your journey from New York and now you are based out of Bay Area. So how the journey has been like, how you came into the profession and what made you what you're doing today?
Yeah, I think like a lot of UXers, especially coming from my generation, it has been a windy road. Um, Certainly didn't start in UX or even design. When I started my career, UX wasn't really a term. But going back to when I was in university, I actually started in environmental science. Um, but I struggled with focusing on anything. I was just very curious about the world and so many topics. And science, especially environmental science, was such a singular focus, didn't speak to me. I moved to general studies, but that was too directionless, and I ended up in film. And film was, I found, really kind of my place, in so much as the study of film was so multidisciplinary that it was really, there was something, it was speaking to me. I was studying psychology, I was studying how to produce stuff, making stuff. I felt like this was the place I belonged. Um, but it wasn't actually filmmaking itself, I think, that I fell in love with. I think it was being multidisciplinary, being philosophical at times, the psychology side of it, and then making stuff. I just love making stuff. So then when I left school, I was very confused and afraid, to be perfectly honest. I said, what is a guy like me supposed to do? Um, and the web was just starting to take off. I was not, one of the early hackers on the web. It was still kind of new to me at that point, but I saw the opportunity. I saw that it could also be, it could be a place where I could continue this sort of generalist study, and bring all these disciplines together into one singular discipline. So I read a bunch of books on web design, became a web designer. I think my first my
Like we
first
all
job,
did back in the day.
yeah. My first actual role was webmaster. It's hilarious to hear. And I, got just started getting my foot in the industry and learn. I learned through making stuff. It's always really been the way. Just putting myself into new environments, new challenges, and trying to figure it out. And through that ongoing process, and having, the great luck and benefit of having a great two roommates who were both in design as well at that time in New York. One who was focusing more on branding and more the aesthetic and style side of design. Another one who was actually an illustrator. Together, we started to discover what sort of this modern interactive design was. we got hired by an agency as their emerging media department.
Mhm.
And in that experience, so then we were started getting into Flash animation and doing like really early advertainment kind of stuff. Flash was huge then.
Those were the
Um,
days.
yeah, we were doing full like cell animation in Flash for like Pepsi and Britney Spears at that time. We thought it was so cool. We did
Yeah.
Keith Richards' first website, which was super memorable. At first, his manager wanted, he's like, "What do I need a website?" And then he's like, "To catch flies." I think that was his line. And then in the end, he loved it. Because we helped him connect with his fans and have conversation with them in a safe manner, and he was just all about it. But going through that process, I started to learn what it was about design that we loved, and how to sort of follow that path, and started to move up from, doing websites and sort of advertainment and advertising, moving into branding, starting to get into UX. That's when UX started trending as like a real thing. We were doing a lot of work with Viacom at that time, with MTV, and they had a lot of really like wild ideas about what they could do with the site to get attention. And a lot of them were really kind of like really counter to like UX tenants. And we didn't know why yet. We just knew it was wrong. We're like, whoa, something's very wrong about this. And then we started to learn, oh, you're violating the user experience, right? Like user expectation is not that, the jackass crew is gonna break through your screen when you go to the site. They came there to use your site, right? So um through those sort of experiences, we started to kind of see like where our position was. Um, Not long after that, we started our own company, um, leveraging sort of all the learnings and reputation we built with the agency. We built our first company, and focused mostly on marketing and communications at that point. And then we realized that, digital product is really the place for us. That was where all of our interest and experience and the discipline that we had been developing and that we love were going to come together. And so, Free Association was built around digital product design. And that was sort of like a big milestone moment in our design career where yeah, that was the platform for where we are today.
So why the name Free Association?
Yeah, it's a good question. So free association, quite literally means it's a process in depth psychology, freely associating. I think it's from either Jung or Freud coined it, where you literally just say whatever's on your mind, or maybe the psychologist says a word and then you say whatever comes next. And it's a way to probe into the subconscious.
Mhm.
So I always love that. Like I'm very curious about the subconscious and the depth of our mind. That said, that's not exactly where it came from. The name free association also is a legal term for a association of people or groups that come together freely, right? We come together to explore a territory or to meet some challenge, and it's not like it's a legal term for a loose association of groups. The reason though our free association is a little bit different. It we kind of it's a feeling, right? It's a feeling about that we have about the future and the
Uh-huh.
way that people are going to come together and create things in this future, which is happening now. Um, Both that people will associate freely, that we'll have choice and we'll come together knowing that we have a certain challenge in front of us and we have different talents and centers of gravity. And when we come together, we figure out, the roles, we'll figure out how to get it done, how to play with each other well.
Mhm.
Um, so it is a free association in that sense. And then the other side of it is just the feeling of freedom. I think it's what we all strive for. I think that's where we hope the planet is going, or humanity is going, towards more
True.
freedom, more openness, more vibrancy. And it really
That's what the
captures the
internet was
feeling.
supposed to be about, right? The internet was supposed to be that. And now this is our turn to actually ensure that the freedom of the internet and the people's voices remain intact.
Yeah, exactly.
Collaboration. So While on the one end of the spectrum, you started your organization, and now you have been working with bigger clients such as Waze, which is again a breakthrough application. I mean, when it came out, it was a revolution because all the data was aggregated from people's pockets, as in that they were reporting that how the traffic is going to go about. It has a different experience from Google Maps or TomToms or anything which is coming out of Apple Maps. And it's still holding its fort without the backing of the big name or default app setting. And on the other end, you also have Toyota, which is known for innovation, changing things, challenging things, making sure the quality is there, making sure every time a problem comes, they celebrate it because they found a new bug and now they have to solve for that particular X. So, how was your experience working with these two organizations or companies?
And I mean, it's always exciting and just it's such an honor to work with these organizations and brands that I have so much respect for, and the ones that break the bounds and are truly, really themselves. And I think that's the similarity between them. They know what they stand for. They know what their mission is in the world. And I think that makes it so much easier to innovate for them.
Mhm.
Innovation is like a big open canvas, right? Like, innovation, anything can happen, explore anything in a way, right? But when you know the sort of beating heart of an organization, um, it starts to become a beacon and make sense of why you do this and not that. Why is this um, a better fit for the organization, but this doesn't seem to quite fit? And I think it helps, it certainly helps us um, be more creative, understanding the personality and the culture and the mission of that brand. Um, and it's more exciting when they have that personality and they have that spirit. It just unlocks your greatest potential.
Absolutely. And I remember that you were talking about the smart city project of Toyota that you were associated with. What sort of work, I mean, Toyota is doing in that direction? And if you are at liberty to discuss or, tell us more about it, that would be really exciting.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I can tell you. So, Toyota is uh, adapting and evolving to a changing landscape. Um, on one hand, people's relationships with their vehicles is not what it used to be. I mean, we used to name our cars, right? Um, and now a car is sort of like um, it's a tool. Our relationship isn't what it was. A lot more people are ride sharing, leasing cars. You don't think of it as like this, you know, another member of the family, right? Um, and on top of that, with autonomous vehicles and just keeping up with the Teslas, there's a lot of challenges there.
Mhm.
Um, so I think Toyota aptly understands that they have to adapt to this and that they need to widen the aperture of their value proposition. And so their answer to that is to become a mobility company in the broadest sense of what mobility can mean. So whether that's, you know, moving around the globe, moving through a city, moving through, last mile mobility,
Mhm.
scooters, bikes, or even telepresence, moving, virtually. All of that is within the new definition of mobility. And the other part that's really exciting about Toyota is they think of mobility as movement, as in moving hearts and minds, right? So that's always been a fun part of Toyota. Um, the Woven City is a living laboratory that they're building on the foothills of Mount Fuji,
Mhm.
um, with the purpose of accelerating automated technologies and technologies connected to this idea of being a mobility company.
Right.
By having people live, work, and play in the city, they can actually, test these different technologies out in a very connected way, in like a citywide way,
Uh-huh.
and evaluate different value propositions, look at it holistically as a system, and that's basically what the vision is.
So you are actually testing out new digital solutions in a smart city, which is a controlled environment. And so these are just the prototypes which are being created. So all the user experience that has to be done right there and then it can be fixed and tweaked before it actually is handed out to market.
exactly. It's like continuous improvement at a, city level is the vision. Um, they're just breaking ground. They broke ground maybe a year ago. The city's still in development. Nobody lives there yet.
Uh-huh.
I got involved at a very early stage, like right after the conception, right after Akio Toyoda, the president, announced it at CES. Um, I my company was contracted to help uncover sort of the UX of the city, so to speak. And so, one of the president's missives was to be a human-centered living laboratory at its core. And it's very, very easy to become technology-centered and create
Uh-huh.
technology for the sake of like, innovating technology, automate everything. But that's not where his heart's at. His heart is about creating feeling of fulfillment
Mhm.
and happiness for people. So it had to be a people-centered experiment, if you will. And the first thing I did with Woven City was help cultivate a vision for what does that look like. So we did actually a Northstar project, defined what this city could look like in 5 years and what life will be like in the city at its best. And from that, we could start to extract experience principles and and start to say the kind of experience that we're trying to create, and understand that technology is really in service of people. It's not
Mhm.
people in service of technology.
Cool. One thing which that comes to mind is there that you specialize in creating that North Star prototypes for various products and services. What do you think that it takes to create a North Star vision, which is very far ahead in the future? Because I can understand that in Japan, they write strategies um, for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whereas a startup would say that what they need to do in the next couple of months. But in at the very end, everybody has that North Star vision. So, how do you differentiate between working for a bigger organization's prototyping or North Star vision versus any North Star development for any startup?
Yeah, it's a great question. Picking a horizon is definitely important, knowing what you're shooting for, how far out. I mean, the reason you do North Star vision at all is to set the idea or the concept for where you're trying to go for, right? The moonshot. And you
Mhm.
know that like you know, you're not going to hit the moonshot per se, but by setting a direction, you set a better point B. That then you have you start your roadmap and you start your journey towards it, and the journey will uncover what's working, not working, and you will end up where you end up, right? But you have
Right.
to go for something. You have to know you're going for something. So, first off is just knowing that horizon.
Mhm.
Um, and that's very, that's a really important consideration of how far out, the further out you have to consider a whole new swath of technologies and innovation that'll happen. And societal changes, because society has to be ready for innovations for them to sort of take off, for people to adopt them. Culturally, it has to make sense. So you have, the further out you go, the more complicated it is in terms of figuring out like where you think the world is going, what are the new forces at play. um
True. So, what importance do you think, or if you have to speak with a startup owner or some entrepreneur, young one who is just starting out, that what sort of importance they should be paying to the UX for designing the North Star, and finding the right partner, preparing for their go-to-market strategy? How important it becomes that they are ready with a North Star prototype before they take any serious foray.
I think it's very important. I think everything in design is a hypothesis in a way, and a North Star, the hypothesis about where we think we want to be, right? So without a hypothesis, you're not acting scientifically, you're acting, you know, intuitively, right? And I think we could talk about intuition. I think there's a really, really big role to play for intuition.
Mhm.
Um, but intuition needs to be turned into hypothesis in order to like test and find a path forward. So that's kind of what North Star does. It takes intuition and builds it into a vision that can then be made into a roadmap and tested piece by piece. Now, the other thing that North Stars do is they create a tangible visual artifact of what this thing could be. And that's exciting. And excitement is equally as important in terms of motivating teams, in terms of
Sure.
unlocking investment. Critically important. You can have a deck and it's like, here's the opportunity, here's, the competitive landscape. But like the thing that makes people excited and lean forward is seeing it.
And feeling it, and the
And
prototype
feeling it.
actually does that. All right, that's brilliant advice, and I concur and 100% agree with that. Now, with that thought, I have to break a conversation into the fun round, which is that we call rapid fire. So, are you ready for the questions?
This is the part that makes me nervous. let's let's do it.
Okay. All right. So, what is your favorite thing to do in summertime?
Surf.
Surf.
Surfing. Yeah.
Okay. And what dish do you cook the best?
um, I wish I had a better answer than pancakes, but I have to be honest. Probably pancakes.
All right. And which one is your favorite board game? Oh no.
Oh man. That is a good question. My favorite board game. I mean, the most generic answer comes to mind, Monopoly, but that's probably the one I play the most with my family.
Uh-huh.
Does Scrabble count as a board game?
Travel. Yes, absolutely, it does.
I'm gonna say Scrabble.
All right. So, are there any hidden talents that you have that nobody knows, or maybe a limited few close friends are aware about?
Hidden talents. Um, I used to be a visual artist and um, then moved more into music. So I play a lot of music, play guitar. I'm trying to learn to play jazz guitar, but I hold myself to a high standard and I'm just not there yet.
So, are you a very organized person, or you are very things come as they come person?
I'm a hybrid. I think it depends. I value chaos and a brilliant mess sometimes, but I also know that sometimes you have to be organized. And so I think it's like depends on what it is and where I am in a process. I think make a mess at first and then organize once you start to see like the patterns emerge.
Books or movies?
Oof. Um, I'll have to say books, but that's a tough one.
Okay. And your favorite movie then?
My favorite movie is probably Fellini's Eight and a Half.
Fellini's 8.5.
Yeah.
Okay, I should definitely check that out. I never, I'm not aware about that film. And about your favorite book.
It's really with books, it's whatever I'm reading at that time, if it's grabbing me. Right now I'm reading Haruki Murakami, first person singular, and I'm really, really enjoying it.
Okay. And do you eat at home mostly, or do you like to go to a restaurant?
I eat at home mostly, yes. And when I lived in New York, I went to restaurants a lot. And then since I moved to the West Coast, I eat at home a lot. And I'm actually enjoying it. I found restaurants now that I eat at home so much, the restaurants are very salty. I never realized that before.
And your guilty pleasure?
Oh, my guilty pleasure. I guess like skiing by myself.
Hmm.
I like skiing and I like to ski what I like to ski, and I don't like to compromise too much on it. So yeah, that's probably it.
All right. And any nicknames that you ever had in your colleges or at young life?
Yeah, in high school they called me Lizard.
Oh, and why is that?
I don't know. Landa became Lizard.
It just came and it stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it happens with most of us. But let's not get there. Moving on. I mean, that was a fun section, and you answered almost everything truthfully, I guess. I believe you that everything you said was on point.
Good, good.
So this is where the college life and the school life part I need to go back to. You were talking about the psychology that you studied as your major. So psychology certainly helps with everybody who is coming to practice UX, or if they were around technology, anybody who has studied psychology, and if they get anywhere close to um, tech, they always tend to move to UX because they actually find the connection, the human side of it, and they feel that here is something they can do, which they have accumulated in knowledge during their educational years. And coming back to the other side of the variable that we are talking about, the Northstar prototyping, how does psychology play a role in defining the initial product or prototype that you're working on?
Um, yeah, I mean, I use psychology in so many different ways. I mean, for one, I really am very uh find like the Jungian archetypes and like Joseph Campbell, Hero with a Thousand Faces. That thinking is very useful. I found that like Jung discovered that we sort of organize our thoughts in archetypes, more or less, whether that's, we don't know if that's inherited or that's just sort of a strange oddity of humanity, but like we have these certain images of how, of who we are, other characters, and they tend to fall in these like specific buckets or definitions. And um so for one, I think that like I try to understand a brand and a company through an archetype. There is a like discipline called archetypal branding, which is used more in marketing and branding. I tend to actually bring it over into product design, and try to understand the story of a brand, right? Like, so for example, there's like a ruler brand, right? I'm number one. We are emphatically the best, and you'd be silly to work with anyone else. There's a certain posture you could take on. Or the Maverick or Outlaw brand, we do things differently. We're changing the rules. We don't follow, the rules. And understanding the sort of like spirit of an entity um, allows you to sort of start to create the story of it as it moves forward in the world, as it realizes its value proposition and carries on conversations with users. Um, Knowing who they are at that core, it brings to light sort of like how you talk, how you speak, how you interact. Is it very performant? Is it sort of an emphatic, way of performing in terms of like, um, or is it a caregiver, and it's sort of like teaching you and helping you at every step. A caregiver would support you at every moment, or like, let's say, a Sage brand, which I would say free association is, it's all about teaching you, and it's about knowledge and wisdom. So the way you actually interact and the things that you pursue are very much tied to this archetype.
So this is where your narrative-led design techniques actually come into play, if I'm not wrong.
No, that's
So
right.
we were talking about intuition. You just said that the intuition and how we are actually going to compare it with relevance. So intuition versus relevance, how does that play and fit into the bigger picture?
Yeah, so I am a big fan of human intuition. I mean, it's gotten to where we are today for the most part, right? Like scientific reasoning and the scientific method, was pretty late stage in the sort of history of humanity. So listen, we gotta listen to our guts, and we gotta appreciate what our intuition's telling us. But intuition could be wrong, and bias is a real thing. Um, we have bias because it's a shortcut to drawing a conclusion and making a quick decision, right?
Right.
It's was probably a really strong survival technique up to this point. So now that's where it gets tricky, is like, when do you follow your intuition, and when do you test and sort of make sure that you're not sort of drinking your own Kool-Aid, um, and so my own feeling is, give intuition quite a bit of rope, right? Like explore your ideas, believe in your ideas for a little bit, right? Like, just give them
Mhm.
oxygen and let them go, even bad ideas, good ideas, whatever. um get it out there and see where they take you. And then the time to sort of bring in user validation and testing is when you've taken your intuition to a point and you're like, I starting to believe in this, right? Or I have an array of ideas, right? There's 5 ideas and each one could be a real possible future for this entity. But now I've taken it as far as I should. Now it's time to bring in users. Now it's time to bring in third-party opinions.
And that is where the validation and the relevance actually comes in. So you design up to a point, and then you have to, make sure that it is actually functioning the way it was supposed to be. So this is where, when we're talking about the intuition, and one step before, if we are going to the narrative-led design techniques, that is where the product design and the brand personality aspects of engagement do walk in. How do you, connect the entire narrative from narrative-led designs to intuition to brand personality and then product design?
Yeah, no, it's a good questions. We, I, I would say, I think of a project, I break it down into mindsets. So when we are, maybe talking to a client partner in early stages, we're typically like, hey, we do discovery, then we do strategic foundations, and then we move into divergent design, converge, right? Typically, and then, detailed design. But and that's easy to wrap your head around. But I think the real thing that's happening is it's a mindset. In discovery, you're open-minded. You're learning as much as you possibly can to become aligned with this entity. We talk about us becoming thought partners. If I'm going to design for you, I have to understand your
Thought partners.
challenges. Yeah, thought partners, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I need to be a part of your company if I'm going to help you grow. I need to know what's blocking growth. I need to know what, the beating heart of that brand is. I need to know the culture, right? So discovery is a mindset of soaking in as much knowledge as you can about this entity and not jumping to conclusions, which is hard. But at that point, you don't want to, start drawing, lines between dots. You just want to learn. During strategic foundations is actually where you start to make sense of it all. You say some things matter, some things don't matter. I learned a lot, but not everything is going to be helpful in this project. So there it's a distillation, right? It's narrowing down to the things that actually matter, and kind of rethinking the project brief. Like we came in, you said you wanted X, right? We're going to launch this new feature because we believe that. And through discovery, actually, I learned that you didn't diagnose the problem exactly correctly, right? It's really it's a growth problem in this way. Maybe it's maybe it's churn, or it's like a traction problem. And we understand hopefully then the true nature of the problem we're trying to solve. And then divergence is really about like the mindset of, to find one good idea, you have to explore hundreds, right? And
Right.
it's all mindsets.
All right. So with all that happening in the product design field, we are all talking about the generative AI side of things also playing a bigger role. And that is where when we are actually putting it together with the permission set. So see, when you are saying that we are talking about intuition versus relevance, we just talked about that the product design and the brand personality. Now, a lot of the content which is being generated for branding exercises and the go-to-market strategies, a lot of it is being generated through generative AI. It's
Yeah.
not just about the logo and design, but you can simply generate an entire business plan through ChatGPT. And the human touch is not there. And when you talk about the permission set, they define their own and they just tell you that this is the plan that you have to follow. And I'm sure that somebody in the next month is definitely going to launch a startup of which every decision was taken by
Hey, it's already
AI.
happened. No, for sure. That's happening now. And it may be even closer to me than I care to admit. But I love this question. I mean, generative AI is the probably most powerful disruptive tool of our generation, if not of all of humanity. It's not just generative AI, AI in general. And it's, it's almost like everything we've done has led up to this point in some way, shape, or form. Um, that said, generative AI to this day, it still cannot be original, right? It's not a human, and the human originality is still unique to us. It's a mimic of humans. So I could say ChatGPT, right, in the style of Murakami or Stephen King, right, or anything such, and it has the entire internet of information to draw on, and it can do it successfully, but it could never be, the next original, or at least not yet.
Right.
So I
Um,
think that, I think originality is still there, and so I believe in brand still. I believe that humans crave meaning, and we want to believe in things, and we look for signals to help us know what to believe in. Um, and I think that that's where I think generative AI is great at sketching business plans and giving you a roadmap to do things and telling you where to research. But I still think humans need to make sense of it, and humans need to put spirit into it.
So one of the things that I'm noticing in the trends is that a lot of people, when they are dealing with small businesses or startups online, everybody is talking about that we are using AI, a very powerful engine, which does this and that. And then there is another segment of users who are now jumping the boat to the, how do you call it? The hipster line of things here, which says that
Yeah.
we don't want to do anything with AI. Can you just please get the humans back? I don't want a decision which is made by algorithm based on some data, but I really would like to know what are the insights about this product are by the individual that I'm buying it from. So, what do you think about that entire anti-establishment, anti-AI voices that we are hearing these days?
Yeah, no, it reminds me of Isaac Asimov's writing, who, by the way, predicted this moment, what, within the 50s. Um, and so, Isaac Asimov, I think as far as writers go, he's not my favorite writer stylistically, but he was, I feel like, a philosopher and
Futurist.
a visionary. Yeah, and I mean, I'm watching his books play out in real time. And
Yeah,
and so I think that like there's going to be sort of this divide between nativists, those who reject the technology, and maybe like I don't even know what to call them yet, but like
futurist.
technologists, yeah, futurists who embrace it. Um, and I think this is the start of that. And I don't want to say pick a lane, but like it's gonna kind of be like that. And honestly, I don't know what lane I'm in. Like I'm I'm I am really interested in the phenomenon of this moment, right? From like if you step out of your body for a minute, step out of like the direct experience that we're having, right? The threats and the opportunities and all that. The phenomenon is incredible, right?
It is, and we are at the right moment. We have the front seat to the 21st century and 22nd century, and what the things to come is very clear here. I think it is all going to be about the IoT, where you have the AI to make the decisions and calls. But as long as your software is interacting with a human, the need for human interaction, need for human decision making is involved. No amount of AI can actually um, win over the argument. But that's where I think we are. So with that, I mean, when you said that we are at a juncture where we have to pick sides and we have to decide that in that where we should be standing in this future or days to come, what advice would you give to somebody who is just starting out as their career in, say, on the psychology side of things or design side of things, and what are the things that they should be prepared for from this
Yeah.
point?
And just to clarify, I don't think that you have to pick a side, honestly. I don't think life is that black and white. I just think that because humans tend to want to think of things in a binary way, like um, we will find ourselves leaning in one direction or another. It's just natural. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't want to say pick a side, because I actually think life is gray. There's a lot more of life is in the gray middle. Um, but yeah, to people just starting their design career, um, I mean, for one, when it comes to generative AI and the new tools, definitely be aware of them, use them, you know, um, I read a great quote that said, no, AI is not going to take your job, but the person who knows how to work with AI will. And I think that's true. Um, I think that like just in general, though, good advice no matter what stage of technology we're in is is just make stuff and do stuff that brings value to the world and know that it'll come back, X fold. Just, whether it's like, I believe the world would be better if this product existed. So I'm going to build a provocation. Just this is what it could look like. Whether it's just meeting people and in those conversations, being honest and providing value to the conversation, right? Don't be a taker, be a giver. Um, those things really, I mean, I think that like they compound exponentially. The more you're getting out there, giving, producing, those things have a life of their own. They attract more people into your world, and that just grows and grows and grows. So just get on that journey, grow your network, be a part of the community, and it's hard, man. A lot of us are, uh, you know, I'm excited
The
with this
jobs
conversation.
that we started on, they don't even exist yet. You won't find a position open for a webmaster or a flash designer or a
Yeah,
Macromedia developer or action script programmer. Those are the days. I mean, those are gone, and those careers, those tools, people who are working on the on that segment is completely different landscape, right? From the designations to the tool set, and the only thing which is still here are people. And you're designing for people. Then we are designing for people now.
yeah, and as someone who hires talent, um, I could say that like try to go to the best school you can, get the best education. That's always good, but quite
Obviously.
honestly, it's not what I would look at if you were applying to a job at Free Association. I really care about what you've done, even if it wasn't for actually a big brand or any brand, right? Maybe it's just you made it up. But the quality of the work and the quality of the thinking is what I am looking for. So it doesn't, it doesn't matter kind of where you've been per se. It just matters how you how you approach whatever you are doing and how you demonstrate that that's your approach.
Cool. So, David, it has been an eye-opener discussion when we actually delved into the technology and psychology and some philosophical debates about the future and how the vision of the future could be. So, everybody who has joined us to listen to this podcast, please don't forget to visit David's organization's website, which is freeassociation.com. And if you are a newcomer looking for opportunities, do mind the advice which you just heard, and see if you have what it takes to be somebody who finds a position with Free Association. And I believe that there are many ways that we can be learn from this conversation and make sure that the Northstar and the psychology part and the prototyping and looking into the future and making sure that the fusion of that conversation remains intact in the longer narrative of careers. So thank you, David, once again for joining us.
My
And
pleasure.
yeah, it was a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and hope that we definitely get to connect once again in the future.
Look forward to it.
Same here. All right. Thank you. And you have a very wonderful rest of the day ahead. Bye.